Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the A24 Project here on the Nerd Party. This is the podcast that will look at the entire back catalogue of the film production company A24, 2 episodes at a time. Last week, on our inaugural episode, we looked at A Glimpse Inside the Mind of Charles Swan III and Ginger Rosa, and today we're looking at Spring Breakers and The Bling Ring. Joining me as ever is co-host of Filibuster and co-host of the A24 Project. It's Lee Hutchison. How are you?
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into episode 2 with you today, and I know we're releasing obviously 3 episodes as we kind of launch this episode show, but kind of for me this is sort of the real first episode. This is when we sort of get into the A24 that a lot of people kind of associate with, you know, the kind of Spring Breakers, the Bling Ring. Like this feels like the real launch of this project for me.
Absolutely. I know we talked about how last week how A24, you know, they'd gone to a Toronto Film Festival looking for specific titles. I think it was Francis Ha, and they ended up coming away instead with A Glimpse Inside the Mind of Charles Swan III, which was directed by Roman Coppola and starred Charlie Sheen, and we both agreed it was a bit of a poor film, but I think they've really sort of hit their stride now, and I think the 2 films we're talking about today really sort of showcase what sort of style of filmmaking they were looking for, and also the style of filmmakers as well that they're actively sort of seeking out and looking to showcase. So, as always, we look at 2 films per episode, and we're going in chronological order for American release date of these ones. So the first one that was up is Spring Breakers. I know that was directed by Harmony Korine, and he is the director of such classics as Gameau, and this is and actually I saw one of his films in the Cannes Film Festival back in 2010. It was called Trash Humpers, and it was basically like an extended sort of Jackass skit about 2 guys and sort of, you know, the old person rubber masks just going up and humping things and stuff like that. It was the sort of first time that I'd ever been at a film festival like this, and also the first sort of thing that I'd seen where people would find it acceptable to just get up and walk out during a screening, because there would always be something they could go and watch else. You know, I was of the belief that, you know, if you start to watch a film and if you're going to review it, you really need to stay to the end. And that was quite a torturous. I'm now replaying it in my head, and it was a terrible film, and I didn't really get it. But I have to say that this film was a film which I think I've now understood what sort of filmmaker he is and what he was going for. But it did take me a while during the film it took me about half an hour, 40 minutes to really sort of get into it and sort of click. And it all sort of came together. But for anyone who hasn't seen Spring Breakers, it's about 4 college girls who want to go on spring break down in Florida, but unfortunately they don't have the money. So they hold up a restaurant and get some cash, and then spend, you know, a couple of weeks partying, drinking, taking drugs, having sex and stuff like that. But then they get arrested at a party one day and are bailed out by James Franco's Alien, a rapper and drug dealer who essentially believes that he's black but is completely white. He's got the cornrows, you know, he's got the Hawaiian shirts, he watches Scarface on repeat, you know, he's got his bling, he's got his guns and stuff like that. He's a wannabe gangster, but, you know, he's slowly sort of takes these sort of girls under his spell and under his wing, and it's about the sort of potentially about the loss of innocence, perhaps, and stuff like that. But Lee, what did you make of Spring Breakers? Whoop whoop.
Yeah, Spring Breakers forever. This was an interesting film for me because there was a period of time where this film was kind of maybe a couple months away, and the trailers were everywhere. Like, it seemed like it was just this viral trailer that was like everyone was talking about it on the internet. People were discussing what it meant. It was shown in cinemas, and it was just like, it was really getting me excited. Like, you had these bright neon colors, you had Skrillex's scary monsters and nice sprites playing, you had the casting of these Disney actresses like Vanessa Hudgens, and James Franco was always someone that I thought was great in most things that he was in, and it seemed to be playing with these sorts of exploitation tropes. Like, they seem to be really embracing sort of spring break, this scantily clad imagery. It was really interesting, and I kind of had read at the time that they dropped the trailer for Spring Breakers on the first day of Sundance. They had signed like a deal with like MTV, and like their servers were messed up because like they couldn't handle the bandwidth for that traffic, whether it was people that just wanted to see these actresses in like skimpy bikinis, kind of like your Vanessa Hudgens, Selena Gomez, Ashley Benson, Rachel Caruni, or people were just like into the buzz about it. It was like, I couldn't believe it. Like, I was so excited to see this movie, and kind of when I went to see it on opening day, I think I had like a bit of a whiplash reaction to it. Like, it wasn't what I expected at all. And I kind of remembered I went to see it on, I used to have Fridays off work, and like those people that would randomly get up and go. And this was like an 11 a.m. in the morning kind of screening time. So it's people that have got nothing really ever better to do than go along to the cinema. And some people were leaving, whereas I'm the same as you, always stay. I had no doubt, I never even thought about leaving for this film. And it would just be like, oh, that was good. It wasn't kind of what I expected. And it was just one of those ones, like, it was one of these films I thought, maybe I just loved the trailers more than I loved the film, and that's perfectly fine. But I remember picking up the Blu-ray, kind of later in the year, and like reevaluating and thinking much higher of it, like what it was trying to say about kind of the loss of innocence, the James Franco performance. I mean, even when I kind of watched it that first time, I thought, oh, this is okay. There was so many great scenes, like when they sing the Britney Spears song, the look at my shit scene, where and then when he's kind of filleting this gun as well. There's just so many kind of great moments and imagery, and I just think it is a work of art in a lot of ways. It is a beautiful film. The cinematography, how it almost plays on sort of these Grand Theft Auto style tropes when they're having shootouts. I really like it a lot more than I did on that opening day. I've really come to appreciate it over the kind of past 6 years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a film which for me got better the longer it went on. I mean, it's an odd film to play over in the UK because the UK does not have spring break. Whoop whoop. Spring. We get Easter holidays. That's what we've got, where it's basically, you get 2 weeks off school, but you're still like 16 or whatever, and, you go camping with your folks or go to a caravan park or something. There is not these, let's just drive down and get drunk, on Stonehaven Beach or something. That doesn't happen here. So therefore, I think spring break, my only real sort of bar to this at this point was that episode of Friends where Ross is concerned that his younger girlfriend is going on spring break, and so we didn't really have that. So watching this, the first sort of 30 minutes of it, it's just constant, just you got the really loud music, you've got all these leering shots of all these girls in bikinis and stuff too, and then beer flying everywhere, drugs and stuff like that. And it's almost to the point where it was giving me a migraine. It was like that intense, and you're just like, oh, this is going to be absolutely horrendous if it continues like this. Because I've just been looking back at my review of it from the time, and I've referenced another film, I think it was Project X, which came out around the same time, and it was my most hated film of 2012. And it's like this film about these kids who have a party in their backyard, but then the whole town basically shows up, and it's just like so excess and so like got all these cool songs and stuff like that. It's just like, it was just awful. It had no real story to it, and I was worried that this was where it was going. But then James Franco turned up, and that's when the film sort of turned around for me, because he turns up looking like like a Gary Oldman knockoff from True Romance, but he's called Alien, but his performance is on another planet, another level for me in this. You've got, like you say, these Disney girls gone wild with Vanessa Hudgens and Selena Gomez in it, but it's James Franco makes this film for me. If he wasn't in it, I don't think this film would be anywhere near as highly regarded as it was. He has had some issues recently, but for me, it's his performance. It's like, look at my shit, look at my Rolexes, look at my AK-47s, look at, I got Scarface on repeat, got my shorts, got all this stuff. He's just great, and it's like, they want a motivational song before going out and robbing people, so he decides to play a beautiful piano version of Britney Spears every time. It's just like every single thing that you would expect him to do in playing, a white guy who thinks he's a gangster. He doesn't. He goes the completely opposite way, and it totally works. And that scene that you mentioned about the sort of filleting the guns that are being pointed at him. Apparently, that was just something he decided to do on the spur of the moment in the scene, and it worked perfectly for the character and for that. But I think there's a moment where I think, like you said earlier, I said that this was essentially Grand Theft Auto Spring Break. There's a line near the beginning where, in order to psych themselves up to go and rob this place to get money, it's like, pretend it's a video game. They keep telling each other, pretend it's a video game. And that's kind of how the film plays out. It's like a Grand Theft Auto style game. You've got these characters, they go to a place, you interact with different sort of gangsters and different characters. And then there's even sort of scenes where, certain characters exit the game. They go on a bus and they leave the game, they leave the movie. And just that final scene where these girls go into a rival gangster's house, and how it sort of starts sort of third person, but then sort of raises up slightly. It's got the sort of same sort of camera effects that they use in these video games to do it. And it's like, it's completely unbelievable looking at the end of what they do, how they basically take down an entire mansion worth of gangsters with just themselves in bikinis and a couple of small handheld guns. It's like, there's no way that would do it, but then it just it totally works for the film and what it's trying to say, and sort of appealing to that. It also appeals to the demographic that would want to go to spring break. There's this idea of what spring break is, and that's what the film is trying to be. It's like spring break forever. It wants to be. It's playing into the idea and the notions and the tropes of what people expect spring break to be, and then just dials it up to 11. And yeah, for me, it's a film which is actually very, very good, and a film which I thought I was going to hate, but ended up really, really sort of respecting in the end.
I remember at the time, like, there was a big thing about, like, them pushing James Franco as, like, and, I think it was, like, kind of, that excitement that perhaps A24 at the time, where, like, they really sort of believed in the movies that they were wanting to do, and they needed to stand out to kind of get their foothold in. And I remember sort of at the time that they had these sort of adverts where it was like, James Franco, like, he could be an Oscar nominee for the role of Alien. And I remember I was doing some research into the film, and I came across an interview with James Franco where he was like, this was like before Wolf of Wall Street came out, and Margot Robbie got in touch with him and went, can you, like, print me a photo of, like, all the tattoos and details so that I can get this costume perfect for, like, a Halloween party? And he was like the character of Alien was, like, the ultimate Halloween costume for that year. It was quite surreal to see how he kind of exploded quite a lot, that character. Like, it seemed to be the real breakout from this movie was James Franco, and I think he was so good in this role. And I think every actor or actress clearly had faith and belief in this movie, because if you're some of these Disney actors, basically, they may be colourful people in their private life, but the movies that they'd chosen or projects that they'd been in before then were very safe. But to then kind of go into a movie like this, essentially an indie art house movie where they're going to be kind of leered at, potentially, they're going to be in bikinis the whole time. It's a really brave decision by everyone to kind of get involved in this. They weren't doing it for the pay, that's for sure.
No, absolutely. I mean, this was a very, very low budget film, and it's a film which, it could have ruined the careers of Selena Gomez and Vanessa Hudgens, but they've both come out of it very well, and it's even like the sort of supporting characters. Because I mean, I think a lot of the people were real. There was probably real sort of gangsters and sort of underworld people in the scenes in Florida, and I mean, there's like, at the beginning of the film, there's scenes. Selena Gomez's character is the sort of one in the group who's on the sort of periphery of the group, because she's actually sort of a Christian, and a lot of what they do is, she's not sure about it. But I mean, I remember seeing the scene where she's at, like, the church meeting, and it's like there's a a former wrestler called Jeff Jarrett who's playing the preacher in that, and I'm like, oh my god, that's Jeff Jarrett from WCW wrestling, and it's like that's obviously something that I would get, but not a lot of other people get. It's just interesting the people that appear in the film and stuff like that. It's interesting choices, but I think it totally works, and it's sort of you buy into the grittiness and the realness of it, and the sort of soundtrack is fantastic as well. I mean, it's not absolutely not my type of music, but it totally fits and works for the type of movie that Harmony was trying to make, I think.
You kind of think of like the first two A24 movies we did that sort of had like a kind of tepid kind of dip into sort of the kind of the box office for them, where something like Spring Breakers really did explode. That it's one of these movies that you sometimes read about when like a big blockbuster movie comes out, where it's like, yeah, it made a lot of money, but in reality the biggest kind of per screen movie was this small indie movie that was playing in all these sort of coastal elite cities, and like it was a movie like that was just exploding. Kind of like, I think everything that they sort of marketed it at really kind of created a lot of buzz and excitement about this movie. And then they were saying that it broke records in terms of how badly it tested before even the movie came out, in terms of people walking out, kind of that. But there was still something in that kind of marketing that really kind of connected with people, even though kind of people were telling them, don't release this movie, this is not kind of good. Like, it may have worked. It might not have been people's favorite movie kind of watching it first. It might have been something that they've clicked with on the second one, but it's clearly worked on an audience. And you still hear people saying kind of Spring Break bitches, solely based on the fact that back of this movie. It's nothing kind of part of our culture. It seems to have really exploded since this movie.
Yeah, no, I mean it's one of those little films that sort of became just like a cultural success. I mean, I think over even the UK, I think it did pretty well, especially in terms of the sort of critics and stuff like that. I think it was on quite a few critics' best of films at the end of that year, even though it's not the type of film you would expect, especially British audiences to embrace, because of the fact that they don't really know or understand Spring Break. But it did work. But I was looking at the Oscar nominees for that year that James Franco could have potentially been nominated, and it was Jared Leto won for Dallas Buyers Club, and you had Barkhad Abdi for Captain Phillips, Fassbender for 12 Years a Slave. I mean, Jonah Hill in Wolf of Wall Street is probably the one immediately there you go, well, I probably would have put James Franco certainly in the mix. Maybe not to win, but certainly in the mix for that sort of thing. I think his performance is just off the charts, and is not a huge part of why I find that film so damn entertaining and made it the success it was. But I mean, like we say, it's a certain person's view of what the youth of that particular time was like and what they wanted out of life. And I think, if you're looking to create a double bill of what you program with Spring Breakers, I mean, the next film that we're about to look at is pretty much the perfect choice. You couldn't find a better sort of double bill to look at the youth of the people sort of around the late sort of noughties of sort of around 2010 to 2012, and that's Sofia Coppola's The Bling Ring. And this is a film based on a true life Vanity Fair article about a group of young teenagers who lived in LA, who basically went around robbing the houses of the rich and famous, including sort of Paris Hilton, Lindsay Lohan, Orlando Bloom, and stuff like that. And it's about their sort of obsession with sort of fame, money, wealth, and also, just sort of eventually being seen, and the fame that came ultimately with their being arrested by the police for robbing these incredibly rich people, but not giving it to the poor Robin Hood style. So, what were your thoughts on The Bling Ring?
Yeah, I like Spring Breakers. This was another movie I caught at the cinema, and actually, like Spring Breakers, it was in my top 20 for that year. I kind of looked up on Letterboxd this week to find out what it was, and it was there. It was one after another. It was Bling Ring, then Spring Breakers, and I think it definitely ties in sort of if you were making a double feature of it, because even kind of on a professional level, you have someone like Emma Watson who's kind of come off the Harry Potter movies, all very safe. You know, in a movie like this, you know, she's with Sofia Coppola. She's gone with like a top tier director. She's in a kind of role that is very against type. You know, she's in there in sort of the velour tracksuit, the thongs. You know, the way she kind of talks and acts. It can be more different than Hermione Granger. So you know, it's definitely another interesting kind of connection there, but. I really liked it. I always remembered I had moved up to Aberdeen for 9 months to go work on a kind of project, and I was waiting for my disclosure form to come through to say that I could start working. You know, I'd passed my background checks, and I had like 3 weeks of just waiting around, and I would go to the cinema all the time. And I always remember it was on my way to the Bling ring that I got the phone call that my background check had come through, and it was like happy days, perfect. So I remember kind of going into it with a big smile on my face, like I can finally start work, and I really enjoyed the Bling Ring. And I think it's one of these movies like it's kind of almost one of those movies that I would rate as almost like a really perfect 3.5 out of 5. Like it's one of these movies that seems like it's just a slice of life that I really like, where it's like you follow these characters that are vain, unlikable. Some of them are frankly uninteresting because they're so vapid, and you're just getting an insight into how they operate, what motivates them, what their lives are like, that they can just sit there, oh, Paris Hilton's not in town today, let's try and break into her house, maybe like she'll have a window open. And that the amount of celebrities that you're surprised that have next to no security, that leave the back door open, have a key underneath the mat. This was all stuff that genuinely happened. It was really interesting to kind of get a bit of an insight into how these people kind of lived with themselves, really.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's sort of watching it back. I mean, I watched it on release back in 2012, but then you sort of watch it back in the last week as I have, and it's the kind of thing which seems ridiculous and couldn't possibly be true. And if it had appeared on Netflix, you would assume it was like a spoof documentary on, well, surely no, these people must have had an alarm. They must have. Why are they leaving their houses unlocked? Surely it couldn't be that easy to just Google Paris Hilton address. Oh, that's where she lives. Okay, well, we'll go rob her because she's in Miami. You know, if there was a UK equivalent, it would be about a couple of years ago when there was a spate of robberies in Liverpool where it turned out that there was a group of Liverpool fans who were robbing the Liverpool players because they realised they were watching the TV and realising that the Liverpool guys were playing at Anfield, and someone sort of went, well, if they're there, then they're not at home, so we should go rob them. And then it was just like, yeah, so I mean, it's that kind of, it seems ridiculous, but it actually happened. And, you know, there's a bit of a found footage element to it. There's some sort of news reports which are based on the real thing, but it's basically all sort of being, the style of the telling of the story is quite interesting because it seems like it's being told at points through sort of confessionals sort of to their lawyers and stuff like that, but at other times it plays out as a standard sort of narrative, almost like a heist movie sort of thing. And while I did enjoy it, it was difficult to know whose story it really was. I think there was a bit of confusion about who was the lead in the story. When you start off the film, it appears to be the sort of Mark character who's sort of new to the area and sort of ingratiates himself into the gang. But then, you know, towards the end, it seems to be Emma Watson's character that takes over. But it seemed to be, there was Kitty Chang's character, Rebecca, seemed to be the ringleader in all this, and I actually almost wanted more about her story because it was her idea in the first place to go rob these people, but for some reason it seemed to focus on the other characters. What did you make of the sort of actors and that sort of storytelling device?
Yeah, it's one of these ones that you're watching, and that's why it almost kind of feels like a slice of life. Like it's almost like there's that great scene where they go rob from one of these celebrities, and the camera is like about maybe half a mile's distance in the hills, just looking down on this house, and you see them go in. You see some of the lights coming on in the rooms. The camera just sticks static as you watch them kind of go around, filling things with suitcases, and then coming back out and, you know, leaving, and the camera never escapes. And it kind of, that's how I always feel about this film, is that you're on that outside, that there's no kind of main person that you're following, there's no redemption happening here at all. It's just like, here's some people, sometimes you follow this person, sometimes you follow that person, but it's just this literal group. I mean, you could almost say Emma Watson, because she's probably the main actress in sort of this movie, as Nikki Moore. I mean, she's based on a real individual, obviously, that was called Alexis. I never realised until kind of after the fact that Emma Watson's character was like a kind of celebrity in her own rights before this kind of film had even come out, that she was being followed for this like reality TV series by MTV, which followed her partying and kind of looking to sort of have an actress career. This was all going on while she was part of like the Bling ring. Some of it was even captured kind of on this TV show as like the police all turn up, and it's crazy. And like, she, like, there's interviews with her on like Vice and other things where she was like, I was taking heroin at the time, I was on cocaine. She was doing this stuff for kind of a good few years before sort of this film's time period. So like, if it was gonna go down that sort of traditional route of kind of maybe going for a bit of shock and awe, oh my god, look how despicable these characters are, I think there'd be more of a focus on that we do see some hints of some drug taking, but it's never sort of a big focus of it. It's just, these people are stealing, and are they going to get caught, and what is sort of their dynamic amongst the relationship. It doesn't even feel like it's a big thing. Like, you think of something like a movie that's out just now, that King of Thieves, right? This is our process, this is what we're going to do, this is our big plan. They literally go, who's out of town? Okay, this is their address on Google Maps, and off they go. Like, that's it for me. It's just like, it avoids some of those kind of drama stereotypes to just go, here's these people, take from it what you want. And for me, that is that how vapid and celebrity driven they are. I mean, that's summed up perfectly for me in that scene where it's like, you rob from Lindsay Lohan or whoever, oh, you spoke with Lindsay Lohan, what did she say? Or when Nikki comes out of prison, it's like, well, we had Lindsay Lohan was in the other cell, and they were I got to talk with her, and we all these sorts of things. It's real, like, they're so pathetic, really.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, all these characters, they don't have many redeeming qualities, and yeah, like you say, when the sort of Nikki character comes out of prison, she's like, I'm really sorry, but you can catch up with my full confession on NikkiMoore.com and stuff like that. And I think we really start to see the start of this sort of celebrity culture and people becoming famous for being famous, essentially. Which was, I think it was almost really started by Paris Hilton, who actually cameos in the film. So clearly she had gotten over any emotional distress about having her house robbed if she's willing to, star in a film about it. And you've got like cameos with like Kirsten Dunst, who's worked with Sofia Coppola many, many times. But in terms of like celebrities, there's not too many more. They're mentioned by name, but they don't appear because they've still got issues regarding it. But yeah, it is the sort of the fame, the sort of lifestyle that these kids want. And it's, I guess maybe it's down to the fact of just how easy it was to steal this stuff, that they end up basically bragging about it on Facebook and parties and stuff like that. And it's really just flaunting their crimes and stuff like that, waiting, almost goading to be caught in order to be able to tell their story and stuff, because everyone wants that, that 15 minutes of fame, and they certainly all got that. But it was interesting to see that this film stars a lot of people who are now starting to become more famous. Emma Watson was always the star of the movie because she was the most high profile, but it also stars as Mark, you had Israel Broussard, who was in recently, he was in a couple of films. He was in Extinction on Netflix, and also To All the Boys I've Loved Before. He's one of the romantic leads in that, so he's starting to come into his own. And Thaisa Farmiga, Vera Farmiga's sister, who's just recently appeared in The Nun as well, she's one of the Bling ring as well. So they're all starting to come through. And I mean, I don't know if it was me, but I'd completely forgotten about the Gavin Rossdale cameo as a sleazy sort of club owner as well, and he wasn't that great in the film. And yeah, I didn't rate his performance very highly.
No, absolutely not. And I think it's like Sofia Coppola, I don't know how you feel about her, but she is one of my kind of favorite directors, and like she's one of these people that she's in that top tier of people where I will always go see a film that she's made, and sometimes like there are movies that perhaps haven't connected with me. Like I think something like Somewhere, for example, I wasn't a fan of, but movies like The Virgin Suicides, Lost in Translation, The Beguiled, I think I thought of so highly. You know, The Bling Ring I really enjoyed. Marie Antoinette, I kind of took me a kind of couple of viewings to really kind of get into the to that one. But she is a great director, and I think it was quite exciting to see her sort of. You know, she's probably the first established big name that kind of made the leap of going, yeah, my film can be on A24. I mean, I know there was like talk of like kind of the Harvey Weinstein group, they wanted to release this movie. They you can imagine with all their connections, they even were keen for her to she was like, oh, would you guys like A24 want to partner with Weinstein? They're like, nah, we want to strictly be the guys going for this movie. So it's kind of a big show of confidence. Like at this stage, 4 movies in, they've already got the new Sofia Coppola movie and they're putting it out. And I think like the trailer, much like Spring Breakers, was another fantastic one that really kind of catch the attention. The modern soundtrack, the big colorful letters. I always think of that line where it's like Emma Watson's character's like, this is a real learning experience for me. One day I would like to maybe kind of run a country or something like that. It immediately kind of captures you in. Like they kind of are kind of nailing that sort of youth audience and kind of art house crowd.
Yeah, no, I think one of the quotes I'd written down from watching the film is that it all comes down to bad choices, and that these kids make a series of bad choices, but in America it turns out that even if you do make bad choices, it cannot, sometimes it will not affect or even hamper your later career. You can still be a success, as again we're seeing in the news that despite whatever you've done in the past, you can still run a country and stuff like that. So good on her, and who knows. It'd be interesting actually that's one thing I didn't actually do was actually read up on, find out where the Bling Ring are now, and what they've gone on to in the sort of 6 years or so since the incidents. But I'm a fan of Sofia Coppola, and I think this film certainly showed a different side to it. It was a very different sort of style than what we were used to. Certainly, it was sort of like at this point she'd done sort of Somewhere, Virgin Suicides, Lost in Translation, and Marie Antoinette, and this was definitely a more sort of slightly Hollywood style for her. But I thought she delivered the film really well. I thought it was great. The soundtrack was great, and she made all the right choices along the way, I thought.
Yeah, and I think it's one of these ones. Like I think it's almost a bittersweet movie as well. That Harris Savads died at this was his last movie, and the film's obviously dedicated to him. I mean, he was a cinematographer behind movies like Heaven's Gate. He did a lot of the Gus Van Sant movies like Elephant, Last Days. He did Noah Baumbach movies like Margot at the Wedding, American Gangster with Ridley Scott. He did Greenberg again with Noah Baumbach. He did Sofia Coppola's Somewhere, and he did, I think, a movie that both me and you love as well. He did the cinematography for Zodiac as well with David Fincher. So he was an incredible director that worked with so many great people, and this was his last movie and stuff. And he won the best cinematography at the National Society of Film for Somewhere with Sofia Coppola. So yeah, he died at 55 due to kind of a brain aneurysm. So yeah, a real kind of loss and a bit of a exit stage right with this film.
Yeah, no, I mean the film looks $1,000,000. It looks absolutely fantastic and really sort of brings you into that world, and you feel that it feels real. You can completely sort of understand all the characters as soon as you sort of go in, and similar to Spring Breakers as well. I think you've got sort of 2 viewpoints on the film. I think basically some people would look at the film and think, wow, that's the lifestyle I want. I think that's probably people of a certain age. And then you've got the sort of more grown-up adult people who basically would say that both of these films are reinforcing the negative views of the youth and society, and what the people are going for these days with all the partying, the drinking, the drugs, the stealing, the obsession with social media, the obsession with fame. And I think it's just these two films came along and basically shone a spotlight on society and basically have captured it perfectly at that particular time.
Yeah, it really makes for such an exciting double bill, and I think it's one of these things. I think with kind of A24, there is always that consistent thread of they do a lot of good movies about younger people. Sometimes it's showing them at their best, something like perhaps Lady Bird, but sometimes also at their worst with things like The Bling Ring, Spectacular Now to an extent. Like, that's something I always think about kind of A24. They're always good for kind of a coming of age youthful story.
Absolutely. And speaking of Spectacular Now, that's going to be on our next episode, episode 3, where we're going to be looking at that as well as Enemy, which was Denis Villeneuve's follow-up to Prisoners and the second film he made with Jake Gyllenhaal, although technically, apparently, it was the first film that he made with Jake Gyllenhaal, but just due to release schedules and all that sort of thing, it actually came out afterwards. So that's going to be on episode 3, which I think we're both looking forward to, because Enemy was certainly one of my favourite films of that year. And have you seen Spectacular Now yet?
I have indeed. I actually saw it after... I will post Matt Rushing recommended it. I think it's actually in his top 5 movies of all time, according to his letterbox.
Wow.
So I checked it out, but I will keep my thoughts on that movie till next time. But I will say that I do have an Enemy quad up on my wall, so that might betray my thoughts on this movie that are coming up.
Well, I mean, we're always fair on these podcasts. You know, we sometimes we'll like the film, sometimes we won't, but we'll always debate them and find good points and bad points in all of them. So that's what we'll be doing next time. But until then, if people want to reach out and chat about their favourite A24 films with you, where could they find you?
Yeah, you can find me spring breaking in Miami, or you can find me on Twitter at Lee_Nostromo, and obviously on the Filibuster Show with yourself every Wednesday.
Absolutely, and you'll be able to get me on Twitter at champcelluloid, and if you want to read my review of Spring Breakers or any other A24 films that are out there, you can catch that at championshipcelluloid.blogspot.com. But I guess we'll catch you on episode 3, but in the epic words of Alien, we'll leave you with Spring Break Forever. Spring Break Forever.
Forever.
Spring Break. Whoop whoop. Catch you next time.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd